locally for the last 20 years or so. I do the music mixing on the annual Brit Awards for the last 18 years. I've done 12 years of the MTV Europe Music Awards, 13 years on the Classic Brit Awards. I just did the Queen's Diamond Jubilee concert this summer at Buck House. So as well as all that multi-artist stuff, I do quite a lot of single artist shows, which take me all around the world and good fun. And then normally single artist stuff tends to be post-produced for DVD or for cinema or whatever. So this Adele concert falls into one of those. Actually, there's something else I should tell you that I just found out this morning, that Audio Pro International Awards this year, I won Broadcast Engineer of the Year 2012, so I'm very pleased about that. Hurrah! Thank you, thank you, thank you. Enough. So, yeah, it's very much my bag. I tend not to do very much studio stuff at all, but these single artist shows, we go back into the calm environment of the mix studio and little bits of vocal tuning and editing and tweaking and audience manipulation and so on. This is a slightly kind of tangential talk to the main role of PLASA, in that PLASA is about creating the show. And what I'm hoping to do today is to just kind of take you through how we take a show such as Adele out to the wider audience. The reason I've chosen Adele for this one is because we did all those different formats in post-production. So there was a cinema screening of it. It was on BBC and televised all around the world. It's on DVD and Blu-ray, and there's also a live CD of it. Adele, bless her, has won 6 Grammys, 2 Brit Awards, and her last album, 21, biggest selling digital album of all time. That's beyond Jackson, beyond Stones, beyond Beatles. That's quite extraordinary. Rolling in the Deep off 21, 65 weeks in the charts. I recorded and mixed her live singing Someone Like You at the Brits last year, and for the first year we were going live to iTunes straight after the Brit Awards, and that recording of it sat in #1 in the charts for 10 weeks. She's got 20 million quid in the bank as a result of this success of 19 and 21. And some stats on this project that we're talking about now. It was released 2 weeks before Christmas last year, and in the first week of sale it outsold every other music DVD of 2011. It's got various records. There's another one there in the USA. It's the most weeks #1 by a female artist. So she is quite extraordinary. She is our queen of pop. So what I'm going to talk about today is the various processes. We'll start with the recording at the Albert Hall and how we achieved that alongside the video shoot. And then I'll go through the second half of the talk will be about the post-production and how we turned that into these different 5.1 and stereo soundtracks for the different releases. This was her first show back after, as most of you will know, she had various vocal cord problems. She had surgery on them, and it was kind of touch and go for a while whether she would at that point be able to do a full long form concert. She'd done a few 2 or 3 song moments, but she managed to crack the entire hour and a half tremendously. The feeds that we get when we're recording, bearing in mind that we're parked outside the venue in a sound truck, are exactly the same feeds that are being used by the PA, front of house and monitors. So each of the microphones on the stage comes at mic level to a set of what we call splitters, and those splitters allow different people to take their different feeds. So front of house will take one set of feeds off the splits for doing their live mix for the live audience. Monitors will take a second set of those feeds and produce all the individual mixes for the musicians on the stage and for Adele. And the third set of feeds comes out to us in the truck. In addition to those live feeds, and for those of you who don't work in music or don't do music mixing. Just give you a quick example of how many mics are involved. This is not Adele, but this is like a rough rock and roll, standard rock and roll band. You'd have 2 kick drums, snare top, snare bottom, hi-hat, 3 rack toms, floor tom, 2 overheads, and a ride cymbal mic. That's the kit. Bass mic, bass DI, stereo guitar, acoustic guitar, 2 stereo keyboards, 3 backing vocalists, and a main vocal and a spare. That's a sort of 24, 26 channel input. With Adele, we had a string section, we had various additional bits and pieces that took it up to somewhere near 64 channels. In addition to what we're getting directly off the stage, we also put out an array of audience mics, which in the Albert Hall, I think we put out about 12, 14 mics. Why so many? Well, largely because the sound that you'll pick up on audience mics shooting straight off the stage, there's a lot of PA coloration. So you're not really, you'll hear the front few rows of the audience, but you'll mostly be getting what the front of house mixer is giving you through the slung stacks. So we go for proximity to the audience as much as we can. So without overkilling it, 14 is about right for the Albert Hall. We put a circle around the balconies. We have 2 at the rear looking out to the side of the hall. And we shoot 4 off the stage, 1 into the center of the auditorium, the other one up to the sides. And that gives us enough audience coverage for nice audience reaction, song recognition, sing-alongs, giggles, whatever. The mic amps for us, we actually put, these days we put beside the stage. In the good old days, we used to run copper multi-cores from the splitters all the way out to the truck. That's fine if it's sort of 50 or 100 meters, but when you get into a 500 meter cable run of copper carrying mic level signals at -40, -60, you tend to pick up an awful lot of stuff down that multi-core that you don't want in terms of power interference, lighting, earth loops, and so on. So this is now cured by remotely putting some mic amps at the side of the stage and hooking those straight into our outputs of the splitters. And we control the gain on those mic amps from the desk in the recording mobile. The connection now between us and the stage, therefore, is fiber optic. So we don't have any earthing problems. We don't have to be on the same power. As long as our mic amps are plugged into their stage power or their monitor area power, then we have a very clean signal path. Gone are the days of chasing earth loops around a system for half a day before you could do a sound check. The truck that I use a lot in the UK and Northern Europe is Floating Earth's mobile. It's got an SSL C200 desk in it. For Adele, yeah, we were only handling 80 odd channels, but for the Diamond Jubilee, for example, we put 350 channels into it. So it's a very capable desk, very capable setup. The multi-tracks that I use for live recording, and each of those individual mic feeds from the stage and each of the individual audience mics goes to its own track on digital multi-track. I use Pyramix, not least because that's what Floating Earth have chosen to use, but that's one of the most bulletproof field multi-track recorders you can have. There are various others on the market which I like, including Nuendo and so on, and there are certain ones which I absolutely despise. Some of them begin with P, and I'm sure you know who the culprits are. The effects units that I'll use while we're recording are just to make a pretty monitor mix. And for that, I tend to use a TC6000, Lexicon reverbs, the distressor compressors for vocals, DBX902 DSs. Why am I going to so much trouble on this stereo mix if I'm going to take it all back to the studio and mix it there? Well, 2 reasons. One is that the editor and the director are going to have to listen to my mix for a month or so while they're cutting the pictures until we marry my post-produced sound and the finished pictures. So it's nice for them to have something that's approaching the final mix to listen to. But it's also the old acronym of GOOSE, If something goes wrong with the multi-track recorders, which touch wood it hasn't in many, many years, but that's my get out of shit situation, that I've got a very good stereo mix, as close as I can make it to the final mix, and worst comes to the worst, we can use that without having to reshoot the whole thing. Not ideal, it's a safety net. My mix goes on from the sound truck to the outside broadcast video truck. We'll have a look more in detail at that link in a moment, but essentially then the process is from the stage, down to the splitters, into our remote mic amps, down the fibre to the truck, into the desk, and we mix from there and put it. The multi-track I record, in terms of signal path, the multi-track's recording straight after the mic amps. So there's no processing on the signal, it's just the raw mic with the mic gain on it, straight onto the multi-track recorder. So that interface, I say we pick up the signals from the splitters. Well, someone's got to help us find the splitters and tell us what's involved and so on. So we have a big interface with the front of house and monitors guys. Traditionally in rock and roll, splitters are located very close to monitor world, which is normally stage left. So we need a good dialogue with the monitor guy, but before we've even turned up on site, I will have had a very good chat with the front of house sound designer, not just to know how many channels and an input list, but to get a feel for what's going to happen on this show, what's different about it. A helpful front of house mixer will give me a crib sheet with, okay, well, he plays acoustic in this one, electric in this one, there's no BVs in these 3 songs, there's strings in these numbers. So I get his crib list to use while I'm doing the live record and live mix, so I can keep an ear on things that are coming in and going out. So Dave McDonald was Adele's front of house sound designer, lovely chap, incredibly helpful, and he basically made sure that when we turned up at the Albert Hall, there was our set of splits ready to patch into, and he gave me lots of useful information on the run of the show. We've talked about the splits. A touring show, the Adele show was a kind of bit of a one-off. We're quite often going in and interfacing with a touring show, so a single artist doing a world or UK European tour. That's quite a difficult situation for them, because not only are they on a schedule from hell, and they probably finished at midnight at the previous night, got bussed down to this venue, they've been installing stuff with their own problems all day and rigging. The last thing they need is for us to come in bimbling about and getting in their way and putting cables in the wrong place. So we try very hard, not just on a touring show, but on every show, to kind of be as invisible as we can be, and to get in people's way as little as possible. And the moment we're plugged in and we've got a clean signal, they shouldn't really hear from us. If something goes wrong during the show, I've got one of my truck guys sitting beside the monitor guy, and that's his first point of communication. He can say, look, Toby's got a problem with the hat mic, so they'll listen to it. Yeah, we've got a problem too, let's change it out after this song. But we try and be as sympathetic as possible to someone having a job creating a show that we're then going to pick up. We'll also sometimes ask if we can borrow a couple of lines from front of house, for example, to rig a couple of audience mics, or we need a stereo feed of their pre-show music because it's going to form part of the video or whatever. So again, it's just, accommodating what, in both directions, what they can give us, what we can give them. Now, there's all this, as I've talked about, we take all the individual mics off the stage, off the splitters. Most likely, both the front of house and monitor guys these days are using MADI desks, Digico, whatever. We could, in theory, just take one MADI feed down an optical fibre or down a BNC. That's got 64 channels on it, it's after their mic gains. That sounds like a very, very quick and easy way of getting in and getting the sound that we need. There are a few basic reasons why we tend not to do this. One is that we're all synced up to the video truck. So we take video sync from the OB unit, we're running at that clock speed, we convert that to digital word clock. if I was going to take someone else's digital feed, I'd either need to sample rate convert it, or I'd need to clock the PA guys. Now, when you've got a big, hefty, loud system, and you all know what digital clock errors sound like when they go full pelt, that's the last thing that he wants coming out from him. So they're normally slightly loath to be clocked off a video source. Secondly, levels, the gain structure that front of house mixers use tend to be different to how we record. On a 24-bit digital signal on a PA desk, you've got bags of quality, and so therefore you can leave bags of headroom. And it just tends to be the way it works out, that they're going for safety and ease of mixing. We're going for maximizing the recording signal. So we want our signals, the ideal view of peak hold meters on our multitrack at the end of a show is that they all hit -1. Nothing went red, nothing was that much lower. So we try and operate in the top kind of 560 dB of the digital spectrum. There's no need to do that front of house. They're not recording it. Yes, they're looking for signal quality, but their gain structure means that they're running lower. And when I've taken a MADI feed sometimes from front of house setup, we'll be getting like neg 20 on everything, and that's not ideal for me in post-production, where we're going to further alter the signal. So there's the various reasons why we don't take this quick shortcut of MADI. So that's our link from the hall. Now our link onwards to the guys who are shooting the picture side of it, and we give them our sound feed. They will sort out for our truck. They tend to be like the bosses of the shoot, because they've got a lot more to do than we have. They've got probably, I think Adele was something like an 18-20 camera shoot. They've got a lot of cabling to go in. They will have spec'd out the park up area, so they'll tell us where we're parking, where we're getting our power from, and so on. So all that info comes from the OB company. Our feeds to and from them, we've got comms. There's a PTB, production talkback, which is a listen. It's an open mic or an open mix of the director and his PA. And normally everyone on a show is listening to production talkback the whole time, either on radios or they've got it open in their truck. It's always a slightly odd one, that we're trying to mix sound, and we're supposed to be listening loud and clear to someone talking in our ear. So we quite often miss calls, and so on a big hectic show, I'll have someone in my truck just listening to a production talkback. That's their only job. I turn mine off, and if there's something to do with the sound, they tap me on the shoulder. We can talk back to the director, we can talk back to his PA, and we can talk to the sound guy in the OB area who's taking our music feed. They give us reference pictures, normally 2 pictures, a wide shot of the stage and the line cut of the output. Wide shots there for when they're on a close-up of the soloist and you haven't actually noticed that the choir's walked on in the background. They give us video sync, either standard def black and burst, which is basically a black PAL or NTSC picture, but our sync generators can read that, or they give us the newer HD tri-level sync, and again we're then running perfectly on clock with the video guys. They give us time code, and that is common time code that goes to all the VT recorders and our multi-track recorders, so that when we finally knit the thing back together, we can do it by numbers rather than hand and eye. We send our mix to them. They give us what's called a TX return, which is just my confidence monitor through the OB truck, so I can listen to what they're giving back to me and check that they're identical. Broadcast levels, just as a by the by, we work at ppm 6 is the sort of the EBU standard, ppm peak program meter. ppm 6 roughly equates to -10 dB full scale, but not quite. So sometimes we'll know, if we're working for the BBC, we can work ppm 6. Other European broadcasters will insist that there's no peak higher than -10. So that's a conversation to have with your final broadcaster before you start spitting stuff out and having it limited by some nasty old Neve limiter in their truck. Again, we're here with Adele. We're talking about a kind of single artist show, And so really once we've got our information and we're plugged in and we've got our feeds to and from the OB unit, the scanner, that's kind of, it's not the end of the communication because we're all listening as to when the show's going up and if someone's got a problem. But on a multi-artist show, and these tend to be TV-driven shows, so even Queen's Diamond Jubilee was a TV-driven show even though it was a live event, so it was being called by the TV director. Same with the Brits, same with the MTVs, same with the Classic Brits, same with the kick-off concert in Soweto and so on. It's all driven by TV because that's its primary focus. In a single artist show, it's driven by the show. So we just have to catch the show. Now the director can scream stop at some point and they'll hold between songs if he's got a real problem. But really what happens is once the show's started, it runs and it stops. And we've hopefully captured everything that happened in between. My crew on a job like this, that's me, basically doing the prep, producing the audio side of it and doing the live mix. On Adele I had 4 assistant engineers and they're responsible for hooking, running the fibre, hooking in the mic amps, rigging the audience mics, running the multi-tracks, being my guarantee engineer in the truck, ensuring our sync and time code and so on is all working perfectly. So for a very simple show, I might have 2 assistants. For something that was a bit more hectic, like the Adele show, with a very quick get-in time, we had 4 on board. And we had a production assistant, my niece Grace, who was mad about Adele and offered to come along and make the tea, so she got credit. And then we've got the people who look after the truck. Steve Long looks after Floating Earth, and Kat Lanes back at the office looks after our side of things. So they'll be liaising with the client while we're operational. So that's how we capture it. Before we move on to, because I'm now going to go on to the sort of post-production side of it, has anyone got any questions about the recording and capture side of it? Yes. Mic coming.
How many time you need for the preparation of a work like this?
Sorry, I'm the wrong side of the speakers. Take it.
How many time you need to set up all the recording tools for a show like this?
Okay, it was just one night.
One night?
Yeah.
And
yeah, go on.
how many? No one try. Nothing.
Okay. So yeah, the question was how many times did we set this up? Well, this was just a one night event. We were in about 9 o'clock in the morning, and we were out by midnight, and that was it. I've worked with Adele a few times before, but this was just a one-off concert. Sometimes we'll shoot 2 or even 3 nights of an artist, but in the current days of budgets that we're all too painfully aware of, it's normally a one-day event. So, yes.
Do you have to think at all about if front of house is using any specific effects or specific channel strips that Adele demands or the front of house demands? Do you ever have conversations with them, or do they send you the effects back down to you, just the effects? So if that must be on that track.
Yes, in fact, you're absolutely right on all counts. So sometimes we'll get a request from, certainly in multi-artist shows where they're not sure what's going to happen. Their engineer will say, "Oh, we need a Focusrite Red, we need this delay, we want this reverb," and so on. So we'll get that in. It's very handy to know where a delay time belongs to a song, and a delay is kind of part of it's. You will know it from the single, if you like. Then it's quite important that we're on the same delay as front of house, that they're not just creeping away from each other and that kind of thing. And yes, the last option that you mentioned, I do this with Kylie all the time, is her Chris Pine, her front of house engineer, will give me a stereo set of vocal things back, because a lot of Kylie's stuff, these big spinny delays and so on, which yes I could recreate, but he's done them. So we'll have those. There's 2 more lines, thank you. So yeah, it's just, sometimes it's a kind of, if you like, a toys part of the rider, and other times it's recommendation, and sometimes it's a return feed to us. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. I noticed some amplifiers underneath the violin section, the string section, and things like that. I'm just wondering if they consult with you in terms of separation, for example, or when they're designing the stage set. I noticed, for example, the drum kit is, you know, where it should be for a gig, but from a recording point of view, it's probably not exactly what you want. So I'm just wondering if they consult with you in terms of designing the set, or you just work with what you get given.
On a TV-led show, which this wasn't, then yes, I'll be consulted as to, you know, if there's an orchestra and they want to put a drum kit in the middle of it, and they don't want any screens, and they don't want to see any wedges, and they don't want to see any microphones, it starts to get quite hard. We get a pot of invisible paint out and just cover everything with that. But yes, they will, where it's going to be a known kind of coloration pollution issue on the stage, we will have a chat with them. But this was an existing stage setup. The strings were all on the DPA mics, so they're very close mics, they're all on individual mics. There's a kind of thing with live stuff that you just don't fight it. You know, everything that's happening on stage you do want to hear in some shape or form. And I learned quite early on with live stuff that the more you try to clean everything up, the more problems you end up with. It just ends up sounding a bit nasty. And the way to get it sounding full and live is to let everything bleed onto everything else and not fret about it. So, you know, strings, obviously you'd have a high pass filter, violins probably somewhere up around 250. But the rest of the stuff that's coming into there, it's in the show. So it comes down the mic. But DPAs are very good, and there's various ways of mounting them. Personally, I prefer them on the tailboard looking up at the bridge. Some people put them inside the instruments. You can get a bit more extreme with things like the Schertler stick-on bugs, which I think for me sound quite synthetic. I'd rather have the coloration than the DPA, but we certainly wouldn't have been able to do this with overhead mics. And no one asked me because this was an existing show. So, yeah. Anyone else on the record side? Yes, sir.
After the mic pre's, you convert to fibre.
Yes.
What format are you using there and up to the truck?
There are 2 types. Some mic amps will just produce a standard fibre optic MADI feed. The mic amps that I use mostly with the Floating Earth truck are the SSL native mic amps. So they come a proprietary format down the fibre, and there's a reverse fibre that gives all the control signals back to the mic amp. So various different ways of doing it. I think Floating Earth have now got 128 remote mic amps, so you can normally stick with that proprietary format, and then a bolt-on would be something like a Digico rack with a fibre MADI output, and bring that back to the truck as a separate MADI feed. So yeah, I don't know what SSL's proprietary fibre format is called, but it's it works. Anyone else before we move on to post? Yeah.
Just 2 quick questions. The first question is, do you run a backup multi-track recorder for redundancy in the truck?
Always.
Always, okay.
Absolutely always.
What system do you use for your backup?
Pyramix again.
Pyramix again.
So, yeah, there are various solutions, but running 2, what was this, 2 80-track Pyramixes is pretty good.
My second question, what effects mics do you use?
It'll vary depending on the venue. So in a big noisy rock and roll venue, like for example Earl's Court 2, where we used to do the Brits until we moved to the O2, it'll all be rifles. It'll be what I still call 416s and 816s of 70s and 80s Sennheiser rifles. In something like the Albert Hall, where we're a bit closer with the mics, especially on the balcony hang, we'll just use normal cardioid mics, so KM140s, Sherps, whatever small pencil is just going to blend into the scenery, really. So, does that answer the... Cool. Anyone else before we move on to mixes? Yes.
Just quickly, could you give us an idea of timescale and planning beforehand? What kind of thing you do there?
Yeah, sure. It's a total variable. Sometimes we'll know 3 months in advance that we're doing something, and actually for a multi-artist gig you need that much time to start pulling it all together. I did once do Liza Minnelli at the Albert Hall, full orchestra, rhythm section and so on, and we got the call the morning of the gig saying, could you come and record this? Yes, of course we can. So, you know, and we made that work. So it's nice to have a little bit of time, but if you've got too much time, you know, time makes work for idle hands, or whatever the expression is, and you can kind of end up with over planning and people just trying to do stuff that really isn't essential. So something like this, it'd be nice to have 3 or 4 days up front, but getting a call on the day is always a good adrenaline boost. But yeah, something like Queen's Diamond Jubilee, we were talking about it at the end of February and starting to piece together how it would work for the live show, how it would work for broadcast, how it would work for audio, and yeah. So, okay, well let's scoot on. We'll do more. We'll have some more questions at the end. So if something comes back, then please do bring it on. This is me in my studio in Twickenham. Funnily enough, a picture that was taken while I was mixing Adele. So that was quite handy for today. The equipment that we've got there, we use Nuendo as the post-production multi-track. It's my favourite by a long chalk. We've got Cubase, we've got Pro Tools, but I use Nuendo. I love the native plugins in it. I love the Vari Audio tuning. I love how quick it is. I love how well written it is. I love Steinberg's support. I love the fact it crashes about once a month as opposed to kind of 5 times a day. And when you're doing any kind of bouncing around inside it, it gets on with the job. It tells you it's done, as opposed to confronting you with a little color wheel and having to reboot the system. You'll probably get by the end of this talk which system I really have an issue with, but it's bitten me so many times. I'm quite happy to give you many examples of why I don't use it. So on this gig, Pyramix for mixing, Pyramix for recording, and Nuendo for the mix. The mixing desk, Yamaha DM2000. It's a small frame, 96 channel desk. It can work as a controller to Nuendo, but I'm an old-fashioned engineer. Nuendo's the multi-track. I mix in an audio desk and I record the outputs of the desk. TC System 6000, I think is, I said in the API article last month, I think is the best bit of studio kit that's ever been made. It's basically a 4-engine, 16 in and out if you've got 2 AES cards in it. It'll do everything from very nice reverbs through denoising, through mastering tools, multi-band compression, 5.1 unwrapping, 5.1 compression, monitor fold downs. It's just a brilliant box. It's very fast to set up. It's a totally intuitive little remote icon interface, and I love it. We use Sadie for, so while I said we use Nuendo for playing back the multi-track, and that's all the individual WAVs coming off that, going 1 per channel into the DM2000. And that's a mixture of MADI and AES. We've got 1 MADI feed and the rest comes in on AES. But I record and do my final mastering in Sadie. For those of you who don't know Sadie, it's been around for decades. It started primarily as a kind of radio editing tool, and then kind of found its way into the classical world and found its way into the picture world. I haven't yet found anything that is that is quicker, more reliable, more accurate on picture sync and so on to use than good old Sadie. when I'm mixing, I mix down in stems. So I put down the music backing track as a stereo. I'll put down Adele's vocal with effects as a stereo, and I put down the front audience balance post fader, so it's got my audience moves that I want on it. Stereo front audience and the stereo rear audience. So for something like the Albert Hall, I'll basically cut the mics in half and say, right, those around the back, that's the rear. These around the front, that's the front. You'll see why these components in a minute or two, but you can see there a picture of Sadie. We've got these bits at the top are the backing track, the music track. This next two tracks are her vocal, so you can see here this preceding bit she's chatting and the band's not playing. And here's the audience and their reaction, presumably a damn good laugh there. It's a very funny show. If you get a chance to get a copy of this DVD, her links in between are very blue and very funny. Sorry, skipped on. And then down at the bottom, I've just got a stereo reference mix that I'm making while I'm printing the stems. So we've now got the basic ingredients in those 4 stereo stems to make everything. We can make the stereo CD, we can make the stereo soundtrack for the DVD, we can make the 5.1 for the DVD, we can make the 5.1 for cinema. How do we get from those to there? So this is let's look at the DVD first, or home cinema, as we call it. So here are our ingredients for the mix. Stereo stems of track, vocals, front and rear audience. I take the track and the vocal mix, and bear in mind those stems are post fader, so in theory I'm in a perfectly straight line. I'll take the track and vocals as a stereo composite and put that into the TC6000 and get the TC6000 to turn that into a 5.1. I don't do discrete mixing. I tried it back in whatever, 89, 90. It's an awful lot of hard work for something that doesn't sound very good. Most of the sources that you're getting from the stage are either point source mono, individual drums for example, or it's a stereo keyboard pad or a stereo guitar effect or stereo coming off a playback track or something. What do you do with that stereo? You put it left and right? Do you move it a little bit into the middle so you haven't just got vocals in the middle? Do you? Well, it's quite reverby. Well, shall we pull it around the sides a bit? You're stuck with these 2 stereo point sources. The unwrapper will take that. It'll say, okay, it's a stereo image. This bit of it belongs to the center. This bit of it belongs to the left and right. This ambience that I'm seeing inside the signal is going to go out to the surrounds. So the unwrapper can do a much better job than I can of putting things into a nice 5.1 picture. And bearing in mind we're just dealing with vocals and track at the moment. So I'll create that. There's not an awful lot going to come out into the surrounds, just a little bit of the strings reverb, maybe things like that will find their way into the surrounds. But primarily I've got a solid left, center, right picture, and I've got a high pass into the subwoofer, as we call it in home cinema. So I've got that 5.1. On top of that, I park the 4.0 audience. So I put my front audience on the front, on the left and right front. My rear audience goes to the left surround, right surround. I've now got a real audience image sitting on top of a created 5.1 image. That 5.1 then goes through multi-band, and I'll then limit it and get the loudness feeling correct. The other nice thing about having the vocals and track separately is when you're given these days 3 or 4 days to mix a 2-hour show, that's quite fast. That's in terms of album mixing, where they'll quite happily spend 2 or 3 months. 2 or 3 days, you will occasionally end up with a vocal in one track by accident or whatever you want to call it, being slightly louder than it was in the previous track. So I can now just make sure that the vocal sounds a constant level in relationship to the track. If a track's a bit quiet at the front, I can push the track up around the vocal. So I'm doing those final adjustments during the final mastering process. The stereo is pretty much the same thing, except all the audience, everything goes into the front. So I've got my track, my vocals, the front audience, and slightly less rear audience than will be apparent in the 5.1. partly because it's a bit floppy, it's a bit more roomy. When you're listening to 5.1, it doesn't matter if you've got something roomy coming from behind you, because psychoacoustically you forgive it. But if you were to muddy up your front mix with that, it's not as pleasant a solution. We're using for telly a reference monitoring level of 75 dB. Cinema's 85, as we'll see in a minute, so it's 10 dB quieter than cinema. There's no one that I know of at home has got their system aligned to listen to telly at 75 dB. It's just a good reference for an engineer to always have a fixed level to listen to something to when you're mixing, and stick to that. If you do want to get your rocks off, turn it up and have some fun with the track at some point, that's fine, but you should always have a standard reference level that you feel the track is, everything's working. We're home cinema, not cinema, so we're aiming for a reasonably compressed dynamic range, because people are going to listen to this perhaps quietly, whatever. You don't want to have to keep turning the volume up and down. So we're fairly tight on the dynamic range. We're using the subwoofer exactly as that. We're trickling in anything that's coming off the mix, kick, bass, whatever. The subwoofer is often used to extend the bottom end of a home system. So we don't use much of it, but it's just there tickling with some of the lower frequencies. Similarly, home cinema, we use quite a lot of divergence to the left and right. If you've seen where most people put their center speakers in their home cinemas, you'll know why I like to rely on the left and right carrying the main sound, because the center speaker's up on a bookshelf, or it's behind the screen, or it's down on the floor, or it's whatever, and it'll quite often be an inferior unit to the main left and right speakers. So when I'm mixing and when I'm mastering, I'll ensure that I can cut the center speaker and the mix doesn't fall apart. Thank you. So yeah, we want to be able to make sure that the center speaker can be a little bit too loud, a little bit too quiet, and it's not going to screw up the mix. So cinema is, I think, cinema, live music for cinema is an engineer's dream. It's a mixer's dream. You've got a captive audience. You know what level they're going to be listening to it at, pretty much. You know the frequency response of the system that they're going to be listening on, pretty much. But most importantly, you've got people in a soundproof room. You've got, if you want, you've got the dynamic range of a movie to play with. So you can entice people in, you can scare people, you can do wonderful things with the surrounds that would sound just kind of pretty gross or odd in the home cinema environment. If you've got your system lined up correctly for cinema levels, you know how the audience are going to perceive it, and this now becomes a lot more fun. I've still got the same primary ingredients, although there's something I haven't put on here which springs to mind. Sometimes if there's a big pyro at the end of the show or something like that, or there's some big noisy effects, I'll have those as a separate set of effects tracks. Now I can pop those into the LFE on the cinema soundtrack. I can have a lot more fun with the space of things, but essentially it's the same process of creating the 5.1 out of the track of vocals, adding the 4.0 audience on top of it, and then going through final mastering of that 5.1. Here's our reference level for cinema. Projectionist 7, as they call it. If a projector feels your program's getting a bit loud and feisty, he'll turn it down to 6. So you're working within the loudness parameters, the Dolby dialogue levels, however you want to refer to it, to know that you're not subjecting an audience to 2 hours of really bright, harsh, annoying sound, nor are you leaving them feeling like this show's a bit underpowered. So you listen at cinema level to know exactly how it's affecting the audience. Slightly different use of the LFE. It's now, rather than the home cinema subwoofer, it's now called the low frequency effects channel. So the LFE channel is primarily used for things that go bang. It's a very unmusical device. Well, the home ones are pretty unmusical, but the cinema ones are just designed to ruffle your trousers with an explosion. So we don't tend to feed much into that for cinema. Your left, centre, right front speakers are full range speakers. The LFE is just for stuff down around 30 hertz to scare the audience. I have used it, for example, on Kylie. We did a cinema thing of her show Aphrodite, and on some of the big Kylie dance numbers, we trickled the kick into the cinema LFE. It worked fine when I went to check it at the Twickenham Mastering Cinema at Twickenham Film Studios. Also in cinema, the centre channel is now your dialogue channel. It's not, and it is totally reliable, unlike Home System's centre channel. So we use more discrete control on the unwrap in the TC to create quite a defined centre channel of very much all the things that are just in the centre, and all the left and right spreads out to the left and right. So it's in film terms, it's called the dialogue channel. Our centre channel, we're driving a lot harder, using less divergence than we do at home. And finally, the CD, which is going to seem very simple in comparison. Track vocals, audience front, audience rear. Vocal levels will tend to be a bit quieter on a CD than they will for a DVD or for cinema. You're basically aiming for that kind of pop feel of a live CD. So all the usual rock and roll tricks of checking it on an iPod, putting it on in the car, have I got that right? Because that's how people are going to listen to it. And we produce the PQ'd CD master for the factory from that. That's the A to Z of the Adele gig. Any questions? Yeah.
Thank you. Could you speak a little about any sort of corrective editing? So, for example, if there was extraneous noise or someone hit a microphone, and maybe even, perhaps not in the context of Adele, but any sort of post-production cheating that may, at occasion, take place?
Sure. Again, I actually wrote an article on this in API called "But Is It Live?" What is a live show and what isn't a live show? Without repeating the article, which was about 2,000 words when you'll all be asleep, but every post-produced DVD, every classical recording has an element of fixing up. And it was quite fun. I was having this sort of, well, it turned into an argument with a classical fan who was kind of going, "Oh, you bloody pop boys, you know, you auto-tune this, auto-tune that, edit this, edit that." And I said, "Do you know how a classical album is made? They'll record the same piece for, 2-3 sessions, and every movement will have 100 edits in it. So yes, there is tuning on her voice. Yes, there are odd little bits of, bad string entry. Well, they play it again in the next chorus. I'll have that. Thank you, all 15 channels of it, whatever it was. Someone did drop something. I think the Steadicam fell off its holder at some point. An almighty bang at the back of the stage in some very quiet number. So that was literally, the producer got a slight bee in her bonnet about it, and even when I thought I'd removed it, she could still hear it. So we literally went through scrubbing every channel at that point. So yes, what's cheating, what's curative? I think if you start with the basic premise that any kind of mixing is you're now creating an illusion. It's not a stereo mic in the room. It's not what happened. We're moving faders around. We're pushing. We're going for emotion. It's actually something I meant to say earlier. With all this talk about this being a set of technical processes, the end game is to get an emotional response out of the audience. And so all the tricks that you can use to enhance Adele's message of the emotive response she wants from the audience, I think are fair game. No, she didn't re-sing anything. That's all the live vocal. No, none of the band replayed anything. And this is one of the nice things we have with tools nowadays, is that where a drummer was a bit off with his kick drum or whatever 15 years ago, we'd get the drummer into the studio and And he said, well, while I'm there, why don't I just play it again? Okay, so you now replace the drums. And the bass player goes, well, I'm not quite grooving with him. So the bass player would come in and do that. So you'd be replacing, the singer would say, well, that note's a bit flat. Well, we all remember how difficult it was retuning one note of a vocal in analog tape days. You'd be bouncing across to another channel with the wheel of a H3000 in your hand or something. It was easier for the singer to come in and say, oh, I really hate the way I did that chorus, I'll just come in and sing that. Well, actually, while I'm here, why don't I sing the whole song? Well, actually, I didn't quite like that song either. And you've got this whole new vocal that you're trying to match to the live vocal. What we can do now is just repitch, retime the odd note, and you've got something that will sit there in longevity and be totally lovely to play again and again and again at home. So is it cheating, or is it fair on the artist, or is it the audience's expectation? I don't know, but we do bits of it. Yes.
Mainly when I've heard recordings of festivals, the audience, when they sing along, the delay is out of time then with the track.
Yeah.
I mean, Albert Hall's not not as big as Reading Festival or something like that, but do you have to play with that so musically they are singing along with the track with delay?
Yes, I mean the Albert Hall, it's not so bad. But take something like the O2. I've forgotten. It's something like half a second from back to front, maybe a bit more. So if it's live, that is what it is, and you just have to be a bit cautious about that slop at the back of the hall. If it's post-produced, then I don't perfectly time align all the audience, but I will bring them slightly forward. It's nice to have a bit of slap at the back, a bit of delay, especially in 5/1. But I will bring them closer so I can use more of them without it sounding rubbish. So I probably, on this, I can't remember to be honest, but I probably just brought the rear audience slightly closer time-wise to the front audience. But they did actually sing bloody well. It was like they sing better than most choirs, that audience. So yeah, but you're that inherent delay in a huge arena or a greenfield site, it can, if it's live, you're just stuck with it. But in post-production, you'll normally calm it down a bit. Yeah.